How's it going, guys? It's Cole from See Through Panel showing off Above Snakes and Mega, both books I read this week, both short paperbacks, something you can enjoy in one sitting, and books that I enjoyed for vastly different reasons. I think they're probably the most different you can have two books being. I think that they are both fantastic for completely separate reasons. They're just as far apart on the spectrum as I can find, but I love both of them, and I think that they both have things that they excel at that make them great, where the other does not excel at that element. I won't say it's weak in that element, but they both excel at very different things, and I think it makes it really interesting, especially when I read them both a day apart and loved them both. And I just kind of want to pick apart why I think that is, because there's no one thing that makes a great comic. These two comics do very different things, and they're both great. And I want to talk about that a little bit. So let's start with Above Snakes. I will say I'm not going to be spoiling much, be talking about the plot generally, but I will be showing a lot of art that may have visual spoilers in it. So if you're worried about that, read them first, come back. I would tell you to read Above Snakes before the spoilers, just because Mega is like a big kaiju-esque fighting comic. I can't spoil a ton without really trying to, whereas Above Snakes, you just might see someone get shot in a panel and that character's dead, and you don't need to know that early. You should probably read that to find out. And it's great, so just read it anyway. Above Snakes, published by Image Comics, trade paperback, 5-issue series, $15. 3 issues or $3 an issue, I should say. That's why I read collected, because it looks nicer and it's cheaper in the end. Sometimes when you buy giant omnibus or hardcovers, it's not really cheaper, but I make excuses anyway. Written by Sean Lewis, art by Hayden Sherman, lettering by Hassan. I can never get his name right, and he's lettering basically every comic, so I'm going to try and make it a goal of mine to figure out how to say his name properly. I'm not even going to try here, because he's gonna be lettering like the next 10 books I read, so I might as well try and put in the minimal effort to get his name right. He's a fantastic letterer. I want to show off a word balloon that he made in here, because it is awesome, and a variant cover, because I think it's really clever. But that's neither here nor there. Above Snakes is a Western revenge story. Westerns, just like fantasy comics, I don't get enough of them. I love them. I adore the genre. The revenge story just fits perfectly in this setting, in the Western setting. Sean Lewis has done a little bit of world building here to make things a little, I wouldn't call it an acid Western or nothing. I wouldn't say it's any psychedelic, really, but it has some strange, abstract, otherworldly elements going for it. And I think what's cool is, I think that these are moments throughout the series that you can kind of see happening, I believe. I could be wrong. Maybe it's just, random things that kind of end up fitting. But Hayden Sherman, from this spread right here, you can tell quite a bit of detail. No Jeff Darrow. No, he didn't like show you the fabric, the seams on every little piece of fabric. But he did throw down a million little hairs on this fur. He did shade all of this with some really thick cross hatching. These lines here thick as well. You'll notice his ink tends to be real thick lines. I haven't ever read a book drawn by him, but I know he's working quickly. He puts out a lot of issues, and he's drawing more and more comics that I've been hearing about. And what I've really come to associate his work with is natural and messy. But I want you to think messy in a good way, because he's messy in the sense that he throws lines down, he throws ink on the page, and he probably does it pretty quickly from what I can tell. But it always looks great. It always feels so natural with the world and the story. It always seems to never detract. It always adds something to the art, and mostly to the storytelling and in service of the plot, I think. Because, you could be a Jeff Darrow, and you could show me every little vertical and horizontal seam on those pants. Doesn't matter. Just show me some shadow on them. Give it the color. He colored himself in this book, by the way. Give it some color. Throw some black on the cloak here. And then, hastily draw in that background, those plants. And that's all you need for the story. And the reason he can work so quickly, I think, is because he does things like that are more in service of the storytelling and not over the top. Maybe he could have everything be like this fur here, so intricately detailed, every little strand. He seems to be capable of that much detail, Is that much detail necessary for the story? No. And I think it looks better this way anyway for a Western. I think the sloppiness, the intentional sloppiness, works really well for a Western. I really enjoy his coloring as well. Very vibrant, almost neon colors. This painterly texture that he has going on, you can see very clearly right there. It looks super digital to me. I'm pretty sure it is digital. But when I say digital, that does not mean bad. I think a lot of comic readers throw the word digital around as a con, as a negative, a detraction. That is not what it is. It is just a medium. It is a way to make art digitally. It doesn't make something good or bad to be digital, just like it doesn't make something good or bad to be physically made either. I just think it's digital. It might not even be digital, so I don't know why I'm making this point, but it looks like it to me. But it looks really great. I think the kind of painterly coloring works super well. Kind of leans into that acid western vibe this has going. Story, I think, is top-notch. Compelling. Almost every issue acts as a one-shot. The first issue, our main character, Dirt, rolls into town with his vulture Speck, who is basically a bird from the Nether Realm that's here to help him get revenge on people that have wronged him. That's basically the whole story. We've got a bird that may or may not be real, seems real, might not be, who wants to help our man get revenge on the people that, no spoilers, it's like page 1, killed his wife. That's the whole story. Little bit of supernatural element, revenge, and that's about it. So we come in here, he wants information. He goes to a brothel to get information, ends up righting some wrongs for the neighboring, or for the residents of the town, very violently. We learn that he's a bit of a badass, even though he's never killed before. I'll show some great motion, which I think will come up again later. Also very organic feeling on these sound effects and the kind of lines here on the gun blasts. Also, I love the stark contrast in the coloring between the warm and the cool from the foreground to the background. Just like when he hits this board up. This could be background. If the floor wasn't used for storytelling here, I imagined it would be cool, colored very blue. But considering he's slamming down onto it, boards going up into the guy's face, let's put that into some warmer pink color, bring it right back up to the foreground. Color matches the... he's making him shoot himself in the face, and then we have the pink bang there as well. And I think that is very clever and cool. Motion is portrayed very well by Sherman. I think it's something he excels at. In terms of layouts, I think he uses them very effectively to tell a story, but doesn't get too weird with it. Nothing too crazy there. Sean Lewis, I think you made a great story, man. I think it works super well for what it is. Almost every issue can stand on its own, but as a whole, they make a great package together. I want to show Hassan's, my favorite, probably word balloon ever. I don't know if I've ever thought about my favorite word balloon, because it's not a thing I think about, but that's probably one of them. I thought that was hilarious, because him and Speck, Dirt is the main character, Speck is the bird, are talking about how weird looking his cock is, and so we have that. And I just laughed a lot at that. But anyway, fantastic story. Just to close, I want to say the things I enjoyed the most about it are a lot of humor. I think the art lends itself to a humorous story because it seems to not take itself super seriously. It seems to be very relaxed. I think Hayden Sherman has a very relaxed style. He doesn't seem to be agonizing over every single line. I think he's throwing ink on the page, and it works very well. I think the colors and the lettering really elevate the story, which is something that is not commonly respected, I think, from a lot of readers, even me. And I think they really do a great job elevating the story. The different lettering on Specs, even here too with the sepia tone affecting the lettering is a great call. Specs, word balloons, just give it that, and this little line thing coming through here, give it that otherworldly effect that really separates him from the rest of the page, especially considering he's colored completely differently from anything around him. Not a ton of yellows to be seen besides background things and gunshots. So Speck seems to be always standing out, popping. So I think, yeah, very natural, very casual, very strong story, and the art is tied directly to it. Those all sound like simple things that should be good for every comic, but Mega's not like that. Mega's a very different story. Salvador Sanz, or Sans, published by Red 5. I think Stonebot is an imprint. I'm not entirely sure. I know Red 5 is the publisher. It is the first volume. There was another 2-issue series that I hope gets collected. I want to read it really badly. This was retailing for $15 as well. Salvador Sanz seems to have made this front to back. Art and story, I know for sure. Lettering, there is no credit on the lettering. But coloring, art, story, everything's him. This is a kaiju story, pretty much, with some cosmic origins. Very Lovecraftian, this image to me. Thrones, I imagine these thrones to be the size of a mountain, kind of. And this seems to be a shore, but it could just as easily almost be sand dunes the way that it looks. I think it's very open-ended. I do believe it is supposed to be a shore. I just, when I first saw it, thought that. Pretty much just a fight kaiju story with some really strange supernatural elements and some family drama, only to progress the story, really. So we open with this guy here making a cake while referencing a map with this strange tool here, and then cutting the cake with that strange knife, and that seems to cut the earth in that same place he was referencing. And out of that we have this otherworldly, perhaps even non-Euclidean object, which seems to be very large. Then we cut to some family in Argentina with a man telling his, I'm pretty sure it's his daughter, that Grandpa was on a boat and it got lost. So we don't know if Grandpa's going to be back. And this is where I thought the writing left me a bit cold, even just on this early page here. Also, we have a great dog. The writing left me a bit cold. I think these characters are cold. The father is cold when telling the daughter that Grandpa's basically pretty much dead, even though she says, "Is Grandpa dead?" and he says no. I found it to be a little lacking on the writing department in terms of dialogue, but this is early on, so I didn't want to make any judgment calls too early. Cut back to this object is now open, almost like a bird's nest kind of looking. And I'm sure you've noticed by now, art is incredibly detailed and stylized. I think Salvador Sanz, in terms of art, is amazing. Absolutely unparalleled. A style all his own from what I can tell. Although I'm not really very familiar with comics from his region. I think I don't even want to guess, actually. I don't even want to guess. But not American comics. I believe this is translated. And I do find that it's very distinct. His characters, while they are detailed, his figure work is a little more rough-hewn. Maybe he almost just wants to get through them. It seems almost like he doesn't want to commit the time to it. That's probably untrue. That's just what I see in it. And I think that's fair to the story. Like, there's not 1,000 lines on this guy's forehead or anything. He does have his hair very well detailed out. But even here, it's very macro. It's very bunch of bold lines, no fine details, no going back over it and getting every little thing. Not that's a bad thing. I'm saying that like it's a bad thing. I think his figure work is distinct from his work in terms of architecture, monster design, even these animals here. I think it's very distinct. But it's also a style, and I think it works really well, and I had no problems with it. I think it worked for the story. But what he really shines in for me is the almost painterly color work, and the backgrounds being so intensely detailed while also being a little bit impressionistic. And architecture just stands out as well, which we'll get to. When you see the big monsters, that's when you'll know that it's good. Almost some horror elements here too. I like the cosmic backdrop of this as well. One thing I will say, I'll show you first. His use of shadow and light is also incredible. I thought the way light moved and bounced and reflected and shone onto things worked really well for me. I don't know I'll try and find the panel where I saw it and thought, wow, he has a great grasp on light. Because I don't, and I could be wrong. Maybe it's horrible, but to me it looked fantastic. And here is our monster. Try and get... It's very detailed. It's extremely detailed, and not in the way that I'm used to. It's almost... Oh, man. I'll have to look for 1 sec. Juan Ferreira. It's almost Juan Ferreira-like. Actually, it does look like that to me. I've never known what stands out in his art that makes it so visually distinct. I still don't know. I need to analyze that sometime in a video or something. But this reminds me of that. The way the shadow works. It's got to be the medium he's drawing on or something. Or whatever he uses for tools. But the way the shadow and light play, I think, works really well. Like the light hitting this side of the building and not this side. Going up onto the bottom of the creature. It does look like Juan Ferreira. I don't know if they're geographically linked, but is this like a regional? Because you know how you think of the Lynn Claire kind of European style, and that's what you expect from there, and then you think of basically just Jack Kirby, and you think of American comics. Is that what this is? That kind of like regional style? Or is this just 2 random artists from different spots of the world that... I don't know. I don't know where either of them are from. Anyway... I think that's great. I think that architecture is extremely detailed and really grounds the world and makes the destruction of the environment much more impactful because it seems like a real place is being destroyed. Like, this is a city in Argentina being destroyed. The coloring absolutely changing extremely drastically here when we get lava spewed out its mouth and just drenching the city streets, killing probably dozens of people. Probably hundreds by the time he's done, and forming this ring. The whole thing is epic, grandiose, but when zoomed in back to the family, I think a little impersonal. I think a little cold. And that's kind of my distinction between Above Snakes and Mega, is that Above Snakes has strong characters and a strong story. It doesn't try too hard with its art. I think the art is so laid back, so natural, with these bright, bright colors, and it just kind of forms into this cohesive package of a Western that I think is very distinct from other Westerns, but works very well. Omega is pretty much the opposite of that, where he is agonizing over lines. Tell me, in pages like this, or even just the monster design above it, that he is not painstakingly placing lines. He's on a grid for these buildings. If he's not on a grid, he's an absolute master. But, I mean, they are on a grid. Hayden Sherman would not draw this building. He would never draw this building. He doesn't need to draw this building for a revenge Western story. The elements of this art add to the story of Mega because it's a fight comic. It is a fight comic. Things need to be epic. The story in a Godzilla movie... Does it matter? Maybe you love the story in a Godzilla movie. I don't. I don't care about them. I don't even remember them. I remember the gigantic fights, the cities destroying, knocking over buildings, lasers or lava in this case being shot out of wherever they may be shot out of. Extremely photorealistic helicopters, I think. Cockpit even like laid out really well there. And he does that kind of impressionistic, like every little building is there. When you look at them, they're just hazy little pieces of color, which I think is very clever, rather than Jeff Darrowing it, as I said. I want to show off some art from this, because this is just so cool. The cool factor on this book is off the charts. Like, I've rated the story pretty low in terms of what I normally give comics, but the art in this, I think... I don't know how to rate it. I really don't know how to rate it because I don't know styles like this. But I absolutely loved it, and I'm looking for more of his work now. This blew me away from an artistic standpoint and a wow cool factor. Above Snakes blew me away. I'm like reasoning this out on camera here. This blew me away from a wow, the story was compelling, the characters were rich, the progression, the development of our characters was impressive to watch and consistent. The art and the story were so copacetic and worked as one package. This is not that. The art boggles my mind. The story I could give or take. In both books, I think the coloring was phenomenal. For a more emotional, invested story, Above Snakes is your book. For a fun, action-packed, epic scale, almost kind of what you'd expect from a shonen manga, but with a little, kaiju twist on it. There's no wonder he signed this page. This page is just breathtaking. Almost black and white with just a little bit of like bluish gray. So much texture too on the rocky details of the monsters. Yeah, this is already way longer than I thought. I rambled a lot. I didn't go into this with a script or anything. I just wanted to figure out why I like these and why I think they're so very different. I don't think I could have picked two more different books on my shelf to read in 1 week. But I love them both. I think they're definitely just two different flavors of comics, pretty much. If you want something that's really emotionally grounded and resonant and a fantastic story with art that is just works so well in service to that story and is emotional. I think because of the rawness of the art, it is emotional art. Mega is not emotional art. Mega is cold and calculating and is in service to cool, not the story. It's in service to what is the coolest thing to be done here. And it's really impressive to look at that art and to see it for what it is in terms of an art not tied to the story, just art. The story is good. Like, I did enjoy it. I'm making it sound like it's bad. I enjoyed the story. I think it was great. It works. It sets up a sequel really well, and I want to read the sequel. So I've dropped tons of books with great art and bad story, and I'm not dropping this. This was phenomenal. They both were. So thanks for listening to me ramble. If you've read either of these, or if you know where I can get the sequel to Mega, or just more Salvador Sans, let me know. Thanks, guys. Peace.